Hello and welcome to another episode of the Lucas and Lucas podcast. Lucas Frankel alongside Mike Lucas, and I got to hand it to you, Mike. You nailed Texas losing in the first round. I know that working in Texas, you knew Shaka Smart had a foot out the door the entire time, and that's why you had that prediction in the bag. I had him going to the Final Four, but I had no idea that as soon as they got eliminated from the tournament, he was going to go become the new head coach of Marquette. This is one of those things where if I had known this beforehand, I would have made that prediction just like you, but you got inside information, and that's not fair.
I wish I had inside information like you claim. That was more of I saw Abilene Christian play twice live this year because they're in the same conference as Sam Houston, and I knew they were good. I also know as soon as everyone has a dark horse sleeper for a Final Four, the trendy, I'm not going to pick a 1 seed. I'm going to pick a different seed in a region. Everyone thought Texas was going to advance to the Final Four, at least making a deep Elite Eight run from that bracket. So I faded the public on that. Abilene Christian was just a really good team this year. They beat Texas. It was an ugly game, and I wish I could say the rest of my upset picks were as successful as that one. So we'll kind of leave it at that.
Yeah, it's so Shaka had spent 6 seasons at Texas. How many tournament games do you think he won?
I mean, I know the answer. 0.
Oh, he won 0. It's crazy. Shaka Smart, this dude that was probably the single most coveted coach in college basketball after his run at VCU, goes to a powerhouse. Texas should be like Alabama in football. They should be maybe not on par with Duke and UNC and Kentucky, but like right in the mix with those schools. Texas has like the most resources of any I know they got a league swim program because that's all my roommate talks about is how good they are at swimming, and they're good at baseball too, but there's no reason why Texas shouldn't be the best. They should be the best school in Texas for football, basketball, every sport. And the fact that they aren't is really a shock to the system. And during his 6 seasons at Texas, he went 109 and 86. This almost seems to me like they were going to fire him or let him go, because you go from Texas to Marquette. With all due respect to Marquette is never competing for a national championship. That's never happening. I'm not sure what. I have to guess that it was like, all right, you're leaving. So he was leaving, wasn't he? Like they were going to fire him or something like that.
So I don't have any inside information on the Texas basketball program, but from just being down here and following enough people who seem to have a decent grasp of what's going on down in Austin, he was on the hot seat. This was his year to make a run. This was the team that seemingly was dysfunctional to start the season. They were dealing with COVID. Shaka had COVID himself this year. They come back, they win the Big 12 tournament, everything's going, and then just an epic collapse. And the Texas boosters, if I've learned anything about Texas, is they are as impatient as just about any group of boosters in the country, whether it's with football coaches, especially on the football side, but basketball is probably the third biggest sport down here. Baseball, I would say, second, which Texas is also very good at. But yeah, I think their patience grew weary. Shaka, I don't blame him. I think Texas is a really, 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 really hard place to be a coach at, because the scrutiny and the magnoscope or the microscope you're under there is so magnified because there's no pro team in Austin. You are the big name draw in a major city. Austin's not a little city. Austin's a major, major city, and they don't have a pro team outside of the MLS to call home. So everything you do gets put under a microscope lens, and it gets intensified and magnified. And Shaka, who thrived at VCU, I think will thrive again at Marquette. I don't think they'll ever win a national championship, but he seems like the kind of guy who can get kids to maximize their potential. And sometimes it's easier to do that with 2- and 3-star recruits at Marquette than it is to do with 5-star kids who will come in and leave a year after. So I think that style and that system kind of fits what Shaka wants more. I mean, his teams back at VCU were veteran-laden, junior, senior-led teams. They played that chaos defense that he's struggled to recruit to at Texas. So I think it's a good move for them. And Texas, they're going to break the bank. I mean, Chris Beers, a $4 million buyout. I wouldn't be shocked to see them dip their toe in that, or even try and hire Joe Golding from Abilene Christian, the guy who just beat Shaka Smart. He's getting Power 5 looks left and right. So, they're going to take a big swing. They're going to have the money to get whoever they want. It just depends on who the Austin boosters feel can take them to that next level.
It's going to be interesting. I know that Shaka, the first thing he needs to do is shave his head. Like, go.
I agree. I do agree.
Ruin
He's like you.
It's like when Rex Ryan lost weight, when Eric Mangini lost weight. Like, you lose your swagger. There's a certain identity that these coaches have when they have a certain look, and when they change it up, the magic goes away. This is a recurring theme in sports, and it's a real. People could say it's real. I've seen it with my own eyes, and he needs to shave his head, and he'll regain the magic. That's how these things work.
I do know, real quick, last thing on the hair, bald people hate Shaka because most people who go bald because they can't grow hair like that. And Shaka is the opposite. So he's in a tough spot. He's either got to commit to being bald or commit to being a hair guy. He can't go back and forth. Mm-hmm. I agree with you, though. The hair didn't work. Bald worked in the tournament. Go back to being bald, Shaka. But you got to stay bald. You can't flip-flop.
Was this year or last year was when he went to the hair look, right?
It was this. He started the season with no hair.
Oh.
Or very, very little. And then he grew the hair this year.
I remember looking at the Texas bench. I was like, who is that guy? And the Shaka Smart. I was like, no, it's not.
Because you assume the bald guy is bald because he can't grow hair. And then he comes out and he's got a luscious, an afro. He's got an afro. So it's a good look. I actually like the look, but I think for the juju of the team, you got to go back to the bald head. But it is cold in Marquette. It's cold in Wisconsin, Frank. That hair may come in handy. Who knows?
Well, shave the head. All right. So the two biggest predictions I got wrong, I was so convinced that Michigan and Villanova were not going to make it to the Sweet 16. Guess what? They're in the Sweet 16. Other thing was the Big Ten. I mean, Mike, I should have learned my lesson. The Big Ten in the NCAA Tournament fade the Big Ten every single year. They haven't won a national title in 21 years since 2000. They're not going to win this year. Michigan is not good enough to do it without Isaiah Livers. No matter what, fade the Big. I don't understand it, though, because that conference every year. I mean, is it just – do they just get so much attention that they just get overhyped? What do you make of the Big Ten just being this juggernaut during the regular season? I mean, they look like they had 4 or 5 teams that could have been in the Elite Eight, and they're going to end up with probably none.
Yeah, I think it goes both ways. I think that the Big Ten was the best conference in basketball this season, and I also think they've sucked in the tournament. I think both could be true at the same time. It's not one or the other. I don't know if it's a style of play issue. No one in the Big Ten seems to play defense, and in the tournament, same within the NBA, in the playoffs, defense ramps up. It's harder to score. And we saw Illinois really struggle to score against Loyola Chicago. Ohio State couldn't get their usual 80 points against Oral Roberts in regulation. You know, Iowa, they don't play defense. They couldn't stop Oregon. I mean, you go down the list, there's a plethora of reasons why these Big Ten teams got knocked out. Rutgers should have been the one in the Sweet 16, which is crazy. You know, of all the Big Ten schools, Rutgers legitimately has the biggest gripe over how they lost their second-round game to Houston. But, I mean, fade them. I was never totally on the Illinois bandwagon despite what they did late. But they were the best conference this year, Frank. Like, I don't know what to say besides both are true.
I mean, from top to bottom, when you say best, you mean top to bottom, the most talented teams or the most competitive conference? When you say best conference, I think the Big 12 is the best conference.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to say that now, a weekend into the tournament, and it's not a fair 1v1 matchup, but I really think Illinois, Iowa, Ohio State, who else am I missing? Michigan, like those 4 teams are I mean, I wasn't huge on Purdue, but those top 4 teams by themselves, you put those against the top 4 in any conference, and I think they play a best of 5 series, like they're coming out on top. So I don't know. They suck in the tournament. I will not pick a Big Ten team to win until another one wins.
I'm never picking a Big Ten team ever again. I'm just not doing it unless they have like a dude that is a Michael Jordan, Anthony Davis, Zion Williamson.
Not this year, but next year. Amani Bates goes to Michigan State. That's the game changer.
I'm fading them. I don't care. I just contradicted myself, but I don't care. Michigan State is not winning the national title next year. These one and done guys, only one has ever won.
Anthony Davis.
One, as you did, Anthony Davis. There you go. Good job. Buddy Boeheim, real quick. I covered in Utica. I've interviewed him multiple times. I never thought that he would be the guy on a Syracuse team that made it to the Sweet 16. Granted, they barely made the tournament. They made it by the skin of their teeth, but I just looking at his build and his physicality, I just didn't see him being able to compete with the elite Division I level athlete. I just didn't think that obviously he had the size and he had the shooting ability to go toe to toe with anyone in the country. But in terms of the physicality and playing against those D1 athletes, I wasn't sure that he was going to be able to measure up. But I mean, just another instance where I was just totally wrong. And good for Buddy, and what he's doing is freaking insane. And he's a really, really good. He's a really good kid too.
Yeah, when you don't have that elite athleticism, which he lacks, you can make up for it by being really smart with your movement. And smart movement is better than super athletic movement, especially when you're a player like Buddy, who has to have his footwork set up coming off screens to shoot the ball. And also when you're in the zone like he is, or he was that last weekend, it doesn't matter how athletic you are. You just got to see the bucket and let it fly. And he did that in both their first two games to unbelievable success. I don't like – we're going to pick games in a sec, right?
Yeah, that's rapid fire. That's coming up here.
Can we start with this one?
All right, first game. So Syracuse is a 6.5-point underdog against the 2-seed Houston.
Give me the Q's and the money line.
Syracuse money line. See,
Syracuse money line.
I feel like everyone's gonna be on. I feel like so many people are on Syracuse here. I'm taking Houston.
Can I tell you why real quick? My thought process. I think the zone. Houston's not a great offensive team to begin with. They're a defensive, scrappy team. I take the under. My favorite bet in the whole game is the under. I would hammer the under. I don't think either team will score with great efficiency when they play, but I don't think Syracuse is going to be scared as an 11 seed facing a 2 seed. Houston hasn't played really anyone all year, and they barely beat Rutgers. Rutgers should have won that game. And if they could barely beat Rutgers, Syracuse, with the way they're playing right now, I just think it's a better basketball team at this moment.
Loyola Chicago is a 7-point favorite against Oregon State, the Pac-12 tournament champs. I mean, everyone's going to be all over Loyola here, which means that Oregon State's going to cover.
I'm taking Loyola. I think Oregon State's luck has to run out at some point. They're not that good. They're just not that good.
They are, though. They were. Everyone says they were underseeded, and they clearly were.
And maybe I'll be proven wrong again, but I also think Loyola Chicago was severely underseeded, and we knew they were good. So I'll take the Ramblers with 7. Don't fade Sister Jean, Frank.
Baylor's 7.5-point favorite against Villanova. I can't believe Villanova made it this far. This line was opened up at 6 and it's trickled up to 7.5.
I got it at 6.
You bet it at 6?
Lock. It's a Baylor's covering lock.
I mean, you would think so, right? I mean,
no, I know so. That's a lock. That is an absolute lock.
Villanova without Gillespie. I mean, listen, I'm shocked they made it this far. I had them losing the first round, so I would take Baylor, but who knows? Arkansas is an 11-point favorite over the 15-seed Oral Roberts. I feel like this is probably the lock of the weekend. Arkansas against a 15-seed that's had a week to, let the hype catch up with them, and they get too excited, they get a little ahead of themselves, and then they get the kick beat out of them by a much better and much more.
They played this year already.
I had no idea.
Arkansas already played Oral Roberts this year.
What was the score? You know the score of that game?
I believe they won by 13.
Ooh, Oral Roberts is tough, but yeah, Arkansas.
I'm gonna pick Oral Roberts to cover just because I think Arkansas wins by about 9, but I think Oral Roberts has enough guys who can score to keep it within a 10-point game and maybe get a couple garbage buckets late to backdoor cover. But Arkansas wins the game. I can't see Oral Roberts advancing again.
If Oral Roberts goes to the Final Four, then I'm not. I mean, just give up. Just the madness is too much. The unpredictability. I mean, I don't understand how as a society people get so excited. Yeah, this is so great. All these top teams are losing. Who likes losing? I hate losing. I hate being wrong. I want to be right as often as possible. And for the people that are sit there like, oh my God, it's the same crap every single year. It never changes. I just don't understand the infatuation and the love with losing. That will never make sense to me.
I don't think it's the infatuation of losing. I think it's the infatuation with literally anything can happen, and you don't get these kind of matchups or upsets in any other sport. Basketball is the one sport, and baseball to an extent if you have a pitcher who's just locked in that day. But basketball is the one sport where on any given day, an Ohio State can lose to an Oral Roberts, or a UMBC can beat Virginia. Alabama football is never losing to a mid-major, pick your team. They're never losing. It's just too physical of a game. They can control the line of scrimmage. They can control the clock. The athleticism is just too different. In basketball, Max Abrams, or I don't know how to pronounce his name, Abrams, yeah. He can catch absolute fire, and it doesn't matter if he's 5'9". They're going to get ways to get open. And if he's making 12 threes, the team makes 12, 13, 14 threes, it doesn't matter. A 2 seed, a 15 seed, a 16 seed, an 11, like it doesn't matter. That's the beauty of March. And I don't think everyone wants to have the perfect bracket, Frank, but I think you go into it knowing happen and accept the chaos. Celebrate the wins and know you're going to lose more than.
Next game on the slate, Gonzaga, 13-point favorite against Creighton. Gonzaga's obviously going to win this game. That's a lock. Will they cover the Bakers doesn't spread? I mean, I have no idea. I'm staying away from that game.
Absolutely. Gonzaga's won like 23 games by 20 points or more this year. Creighton is a fraud. I thought they should have lost in the first round. They played a beat-up Ohio team in round 2. Like they have no business being in the same court as Gonzaga.
Alabama 6.5-point favorite against UCLA. I love the tide there. And the last game is my lock of the weekend. USC -2 against Oregon. I love the Trojans. I think they might end up in the Final Four.
I think no, they're not going to because they can't beat Gonzaga. But I'm gonna take Oregon there with 2 points. But I don't feel confident with that either way. I wouldn't bet that game. That's the one I feel least confident in this weekend.
Final Four picks. Who is it going to be?
Gonzaga, Alabama, Baylor, and Loyola Chicago.
Wow. I think Loyola Chicago, I think they're the team that everyone's they're going to the Final Four and then they're going to lose in the Sweet 16. I think they're the team that everyone is just so behind and so in love with.
They're really, really good though.
But I mean, the way this tournament has gone, I just feel like that's the trend that this is going to go.
Let me ask you real quick on that. They play Oregon State in the Sweet 16, and then the winner of Syracuse, Houston in the other in the Elite Eight. That is as favorable as a 3-team bracket as you can have. It's the easiest route for any of those 4 teams, as opposed to the other 3 regions. So,
which is why it's not.
I think they're the best team left in that region. Yeah, exactly, because it's March. But that is my gut.
Gonzaga, Florida State, Baylor, and then my least confident. I mean, you basically told me Houston's not going to make it. So, but I have Baylor winning it all. Baylor's winning the national title, not Gonzaga.
There you go. Still the Zags in my mind.
I can't wait to come back next week and have none of those teams right. NBA trade deadline. Some of the biggest moves. Nuggets got Aaron Gordon. They said it's an opportunity the Nuggets do in that Western Conference with LeBron out another month. Anthony Davis, who knows if he'll play again this season. And the Clippers being so Jekyll and Hyde. Are the Nuggets the team to beat in that conference right now?
No.
Assuming LeBron and AD don't get back to the level that let's say Anthony Davis is out for the year, he doesn't come back. LeBron is, I don't know, 60, 75%. Is there a path for the Nuggets to win the conference?
Is there a path? Yes. Is it likely? No. I still have my reservations about the consistency of Jamal Murray. He's been great as of the last 2 weeks, but before that had been really up and down throughout the season. Jokic has been great historically in the postseason, but outside of him, there's no one I really trust on that roster late in a fourth quarter in a playoff game. Murray has shown he can.
You wouldn't trust Jokic?
I said outside of Jokic. Murray has shown at times that he can go toe-to-toe with the best of them in those moments. And we've also seen him put up absolute goose eggs in serious big-time situations. So there's a path. I think Gordon makes them better. I don't think Gordon is as good as he's being hyped up to be. And I was still surprised that it took so little for Denver to get him. I don't think they really gave up much. Gary Harris and a couple of picks, that's not a lot. So I think they're better today than they were yesterday. I think the addition of JaVale McGee was also really underrated for Denver. But if the Lakers are 85% healthy, I think they're better than Denver. If the Clippers can mesh, I think they're better than Denver. I still think Utah's better than Denver. So it's gonna be a long shot.
So the Lakers have now lost 4 straight games. They tied their longest losing streak of the season. They face the Cavaliers tonight. Do the Lakers win a single game without LeBron and AD in there? listen, they had a very valiant comeback on Thursday night against the Sixers. They were down like 18 going into the fourth. They cut it to 3. It was the miracle of miracles. I don't think they win a single game as long as LeBron and AD are out. That roster is it's the worst roster in the league.
Well, yeah, you take the 2 best players off any team, and it's going to be a pretty bad roster. But yeah, theirs is especially bad minus LeBron and AD. They'll win a game. They'll win.
They'll beat the Cavaliers tonight. Now that I said it, so there you go.
They'll win a game. You know, like I said, basketball comes down to shooting. There'll be a night where Wes Matthews and KCP combine to go 8 for 13 from 3, and they pull out like a 113-107 win over some random team. But they're going to struggle without those 2. They don't have a single real shot creator outside of those 2. And when you don't have anyone that can generate offense by themselves, you're going to struggle to score points. And in today's NBA, if you can't score in the regular season, when every team can seemingly put up 115 in the blink of an eye, you're probably going to go 2-10 without those 2.
So if the Lakers, let's say they go 1-16 without LeBron, how much does that help his MVP case in your mind?
The truth is, I think it does help his case.
If the Lakers go 1-16 without LeBron, that is the epitome of value.
Exactly.
What are you? And without LeBron, the Lakers are a laughing stock. They can't find their way out of a paper bag. And that is why LeBron, I mean, Jokic is the favorite right now. LeBron's like plus 550 because he may not play another game the rest of the regular season because, I mean, the regular season ends May 16th. And if he's out 5 more weeks, I mean, that's like May 9th, and he may play like 1 or 2 more games during the regular season. All right, so LeBron's going to win the MVP because the Lakers aren't going to win a game as long as he's not there. National Football League, the New York Giants make an absolute splash, getting, in my opinion, the best free agent wide receiver on the market, Kenny Golladay. The excuses are over for Daniel Jones. You have Kenny Golladay, you have Sterling Shepard, you have a healthy Saquon Barkley coming off the ACL. You have a loaded weaponry around you. Evan Ingram at tight end. I mean, it's just, they are a juggernaut on the offensive side of the ball. And if it doesn't work now with Daniel Jones, then it will never work out. They should win the NFC East, in my opinion.
I hate the fact that you say those things. I don't necessarily disagree with it all, but I just hate the fact that it comes out of your mouth. It's make it or break it for Daniel Jones. The last 2 years, and we said this with Sam Darnold, but the last 2 years with Jones, I think it's really hard to evaluate a quarterback when he doesn't have weapons to throw to and the offensive line's not good. And last year they had no running game with Saquon out. So it's not fair to form a conclusive opinion on Daniel Jones based off inconclusive evidence. This year, with everything aligned as it is, we should get a real look and a chance to figure out, is Daniel Jones the dude or is Daniel Jones not the dude? And there's no more excuses. The offensive line still isn't perfect. I would like to see them do or make at least one more move to solidify that. I see you smirking. I'm not quite sure why. Why?
I just never mind. Silly thought.
I want to see the offensive line, be shored up a little more, whether it's in the draft or another offseason move. But other than that, Saquon should be back. The receiving core is solid. They have tight ends. Like, if Jones doesn't look confident in this offense, then it's time to start looking for a new quarterback because everything is set up. We're finally going to have a chance to evaluate him in a situation where he's set up to succeed, which wasn't there the last 2 years. I said before they signed Golladay, Frank, this whole offseason's a waste for the Giants with how they proceeded the first 2 days of free agency if they didn't reel in that big fish. And to give David Gettleman credit where credit is due, he reeled in Golladay. So I don't give him many kudos, but he does deserve his kudos here.
I think that the expectations for the Giants just went through the roof after they made that move. So we'll see if Daniel can live up to it because that'll be the big question. Real quick, Mac Jones. I've just been seeing so much like hype around him the last few days. I know he had a really good pro day. He has no chance to be a legitimate NFL quarterback, in my opinion. That Alabama team, I mean, he may be like a decent guy, like maybe his ceiling is like a Kirk Cousins, but I just can't see him being a guy that is, a true franchise guy that you trust can lead the team and be that leader that you can count on to warrant a high first round pick on. Like, he had the best offensive line. He had elite running backs. he had 4 guys to throw into that probably could go in the first round. Just the most complete offense we've seen in college football in a really, really long time. And I just to think that to see him with adversity in the NFL, having to overcome that, and I'm more so because I've seen mock drafts having him go to the Jets, and if the Jets sold their souls for Mac Jones, I mean, then Joe
2
or trade back or however or whatever, trading back and then deciding that Mac Jones is a better direction than Sam Darnold, but Mac Jones, I mean, if he goes to the Jets, then Joe Douglas needs to be a psychiatric test. Because
let me ask you a question about Mac Jones though, because I do kind of agree with you that he has a limited ceiling, but his floor already is much higher than some of the other guys. Would you rather have him or Trey Lance, a guy who may have a higher ceiling, but also could be a catastrophic bust? And I think Mac Jones could come in tomorrow and be a competent NFL quarterback.
I think Trey Lance is a little more of an unknown. I mean, I wouldn't like mortgage my future for either one of them, but I would take a flyer on Trey Lance for sure. I think that he is at least has the ability to be a really, really dynamic player at the next level. Not like maybe a little bit of better passer than Lamar, but I would take a flyer on Trey Lance for sure. All right, last thing.
I would take Mac Jones over Lance, but
last thing before we go, on William Hill, I saw Giancarlo Stanton's home run over under this year is 38.5. Will he even play in 39 games? Yeah.
That feels like free money on the under.
Which means he'll hit 60 home runs this year, win the AL MVP, and the Yankees will lose the division series once again. That'll do it for this episode of the Lucas podcast. Thank you for listening. We'll see you all next week when I get every single Final Four team wrong.